Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Callum Carmichael. I'm delighted to be here this afternoon and to be speaking at the Hyper Games conference. I'm joined by Gonçalo Martins, who is the head of marketing for Boombit, company synonymous with hyper casual development and success within the ecosystem. Today it's going to be a fireside chat. I'm going to be asking Gonçalo a number of questions around how they've approached the changes that Apple have implemented with ATT, plus also how they've seen success and what they've changed as a result of that. Boombit as a company, as I've said, synonymous with the industry and synonymous with success. The likes of Shoe Race, Construction Ramp Jumping, and also Superhero Flying School have reached the top of the iOS charts in the US. Gonçalo, great to have you here. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you for the invite for sure. And yeah, just to quickly introduce myself once again, like my name is Gonçalo, I'm the head of marketing at Boombit. Mainly, I oversee the user acquisition, the monetization department. So it was definitely 2021 was a big year for us with this ATT coming in. And yeah, let's chat a bit about that.
Delighted. Well, as we saw kind of midway through Q2, the impending ATT implementation took place. There was obviously a long kind of lead-in process from Apple that eventually hit kind of April-May time. In terms of kind of pre-ATT and once it was enforced, talk to me a little bit about how you kind of prepared for a post-ATT world.
Yeah. Well, I think, even all publishers and even maybe all networks, it was a bit of really waiting until the D-Day and see like the impact of the ATT within our campaigns, within our UA, even within our testing. But of course, we try to plan a bit ahead, try to plan a bit like our conversion values list, try to change even before the ATT a bit of our prototyping and testing and creative testing to Android. But I think until the day where really iOS 14.5 came out, we were just kind of waiting and seeing how much would be the impact. It was interesting to see that it was a bit the overall feeling of the whole industry, right? Because you always feel like that it's only yourself that you are waiting to see what's going to happen. But then as soon as it hit, you start talking with all networks, all your peers within the industry, and it was the only way, honestly. And I think no one was really ready. And actually, I'm happy we did it this way, because from that moment on, then you can just start adapting your strategies. And yeah, it was a interesting couple of weeks, and even Apple allowed a bit of at least a month for people to adapt.
And in terms of your approach, I mean, certainly from the conversations that we had with a number of our partners all over the world, there were slightly different approaches that were taken. Was there anything that you did in particular in kind of preparing for the uncertainty ahead at this stage?
Yes, I mean, I think right away from the start, we try to understand and see like how the users really behave in terms of like user acquisition. So we started right away from this having this mentality of trying to predict not only like ARPU Day 7, but also CPI, trying to predict user acquisition, because even though it is not 100% reliable, right? Because no one will always have the values at a 100% scale. And maybe it's not even 90% or 80%, but it's definitely, once you start predicting and creating your own prediction algorithm for ARPU Day 7, for CPI, and all of these metrics, you are definitely closer to the truth than to just wait, receive the data that is given to you and do nothing, right? So that was kind of a mentality that to adapt from the start, is that we're not gonna have 100% of the data. We're not gonna be as close and as granular as before. At least let's stay as closer as we can get. And of course, in the beginning, our algos were a bit off. In the beginning, we had to adapt a lot of things, do a lot of testing, like do a lot of testing, create a lot of campaigns in a lot of geos for a lot of genres. And then based on that, just start getting closer and closer to the truth. And nowadays, I'm super super happy and comfortable to say that, yeah, I think we can run and launch any game on iOS without any issue.
I think it's fair to say that, I mean, it was a level set for the whole industry, right? So it wasn't just yourselves that had to kind of start going through all of these adopted changes. It's not only the networks, but also the SRNs and plus also the MMPs as well. Did your conversations and ultimately did your relationship change with your MMP and also with your supply partners as well as as a result of these changes with ATT?
Yeah. I think it didn't change. Like, I mean, with the MMPs, definitely didn't change. I think it, at the end of the day, also the MMPs were once again like waiting for it to hit to then help adapting, and definitely the relationship with our MMP got even stronger. I think we are now using like much more closer, and it's much more of we need something quickly, and that relationship grew even stronger. Then of course within the networks, it really depends how the networks are then passing the scan data. Some were more ready than the others, but it was also very interesting to see how for some networks we kind of the publishers needed to push the changes. I'm not going to name any names, of course, but how also other networks, they were the ones helping the publishers move on as soon as iOS 14 came out. So I think overall it didn't change much. We still need the networks, we still need the MMPs, the networks and the MMPs, they still need the publishers. I think it's the ecosystem is exactly the same as it was before, because I mean, let's not forget, there's still Android with 50% of the market. So yeah, definitely nothing changed.
And also the elephant in the room being the increase in market share for ASA as well.
For sure. Yeah, that's it's something that for hyper casual is still a sensitive topic, because it's hard to take advantage of ASA for hyper casual, but more and more I know everybody's jumping in on the boat, of course.
Absolutely. Changing tack slightly, just kind of drilling down a little bit more into kind of campaign setup in terms of kind of testing methodologies. It's a very well documented strategy to soft launch for a few days before starting to kind of understand early day retention metrics, monetization metrics, before then starting to put money behind those games. Did you see a step change in the way that you were going around your testing methodologies, your testing frameworks, plus also the types of way that you soft launch, for example?
For sure, right? So since iOS 14 came out and this new mechanic entered the industry, like from day one, we start talking with our developers, and definitely prototyping and testing on Android was almost key. It was literally a demand that we had from the developers. I think it's same thing across almost all hyper casual publishers, especially in the beginning. So right away from here, it was a big change, because we were used to iOS. A lot of developers were used to even coding and prototyping on iOS. So here was already a big change. The issue is that, of course, if then you start changing all the prototyping, all the testing to GP, you also increase insanely the competition within Android, right? So not only you need to adapt your processes, you have to kind of like adapt the way you request prototypes from the developers, but also you need to adapt your benchmarks to GP. And as soon as you are in GP, so Google Play, I'm saying GP a lot, but Google Play, also you need to understand, and this, I think it was very hard for a lot of people, that the competition multiply by 2, even by 3 sometimes. So you are used to see this, I don't know, imagine if you're used to see and your goal is 25 cent CPI, maybe you need to accept that nowadays a 40 cent CPI is a nice prototype. Or you can clearly see within that first month, 2 months, that all your also campaigns on GP that had the same IPMs, the same CPMs, they were collecting much less installs because there was much bigger competition. So I think those two, so prototyping on Android, creative testing on Android, changing all this testing to Android, plus accepting that now one of the platforms that had much more competition than ever before, they were the 2 biggest changes for us. And yeah, it takes time for you to accept that 40 cents prototype is a good prototype, especially on upper casual. Yeah, definitely. So there you go.
Taking that a step forward in bringing it back into kind of the Apple's testing framework. When you look at the way that the limitations or the limited information that Apple shared around things like privacy thresholds, for example, there was, let's face it, there was a lot of guesswork when it came to, and a lot of trial and error when it came to trying to understand what those minimum thresholds were like. We've definitely seen that there's a significant amount more of an aggressive bidding strategy that needs to take place in order to be able to kind of meet and exceed those thresholds. Again, factoring that in, it's going to obviously increase costs. And again, when you've got a time-sensitive opportunity to try and maximize this opportunity, did that change? Did your approach change there as well?
Yeah, it changed, right? Especially for some networks that were really not ready for scan right away from the start, you need to, you definitely had to go back like a couple of years back when you're literally looking at money spent, money made on like this very big pie, right? Instead of like being able to slice the pie, go granular, understand like every single user that you're getting, you are now going back to this mentality of how much did I spend within the last 7 days? How much did I generate from the last 7 days? And then, of course, you do have, especially for SDK networks, you could use probabilistic, which helped a bit. But then, a lot of iOS users, especially from the social networks, they were going to organic, or Facebook. Even nowadays, like passing the scan information, it's not available. It's not something easy that you do via API. So we had to look at the bigger picture, and that is something that, of course, the less granular you go, the less efficient you are. But it was also interesting to go back to this mentality of we know that the game is good, we know that our users are good. If we do have like a couple of networks working, means that probably the other networks will work as well. So let's just put money in. We know that the game is good. We are predicting that it will be profitable, and then seeing that the profitability is actually arriving, it's something interesting. I never did it. So I joined this industry over 3 years ago. So I never had this looking at the big picture mentality. It was always like granular. But it's interesting and it's working. So like I told you before, I think one of the biggest issues as well was that people start focusing a lot on Android. And by focusing a lot on Android, they forgot, or I'm not saying they forgot, but they start assuming that there was no money on iOS. And this is one of the biggest flaws of iOS 14.5, because we are seeing that the iOS users they're still worth a lot of money. They're still generating a lot of money. And actually, if you look in terms of profitability, iOS is still probably the biggest platform for a lot of publishers. I just think you start entering this vicious cycle of, okay, I'm only producing on Android, I'm only testing on Android. It means that only Android is generating money, which, yeah, it's definitely not the case.
You mentioned in your piece there about organics. Talk to me a little bit about the changes, if any, that have happened with organics. Have you had to alter the way that you're measuring organic growth, or you're measuring organic users, for example?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? I mean, at the end of the day, you need to assume that, the Apple Store is working the way it was working before. I mean, you can see like where sometimes you got featured. You can also see like where your game is being associated to other games within the App Store, where most of the times that's where the organics are coming from, right? It's from the Apple Store. Featuring or suggestions, etc., and that hasn't changed much. At least for the past 6 months, it hasn't changed, which means that you need to assume that the organic levels are more or less at the same levels as before, and then assuming and knowing how much you're spending, how much installs are coming in via scan, how much you also have from, for example, organics from Android. We don't see any change on the real organics. Of course, you never have 100% knowledge of this data, because a lot of users that you are acquiring and you are paying for them, they're falling into the organic ad network, let's say. And yeah, but we didn't feel any change on the real amount of organics. We still use the same percentage of organic impact within our algorithms, and everything seems to be normal.
In terms of the way that you we touched upon testing, touched upon the fact that there's a lot more people or a lot more companies typically leaning into GP as a result of the changes that have taken place, and perhaps incorrectly so. Have you, as a direct result of the alternative ways you're testing and the different metrics that you're now also starting to consider, have you also then had to start changing the way that you evaluate results as well? Do you see success in different ways?
Yes, I think we see success in different ways, especially more on the testing side and on the prototyping side, and on the on those first CPI campaigns. Sorry, because like I told you before, I think before it was really easy to just go over like test the game, look at the CPI, and kind of assume if it is a good prototype or not, based also, of course, then on gameplay, on play time, on retention, etc. But nowadays, and it's something that we've been doing a lot, and it's been somehow successful, I mean, very successful actually, is that with this big increase of competition within Android, you need to start looking also for other factors that are showing you that the game is good, right? And I mean, I'm not going to say here any metrics that no one knows, but for example, looking at CTR, looking at conversion, looking at the number of organics, looking at even just ARPU, just basic ARPU. Let's imagine that the CPI is really bad. CTR is just interesting, but nothing crazy. But if you do then have a game with a really nice ARPU, you do have to work on it at least a bit more, because maybe the CPI is totally overestimated because of the huge competition. CTR, maybe it's the same, or you were put in the wrong pool of users. But you know that if you do have a nice ARPU, especially nowadays with this industry that is overloaded with prototypes on the Android side, it is worth working on the game, because probably a game that then has a really nice ARPU and nice retention, nice playtime on iOS, it will probably always work. And that's something that it was once again different for us to accept in the beginning, because we're seeing a lot of prototypes coming out negative with big CPIs on Android. And at some point we started it was even good for us, because you stopped looking at just this key metric that is CPI, and you start looking at actually the game. You start being a bit more, I don't say passionate, because that's also not good, because a lot of times you have to cancel your own games, but you start looking at the game itself, how the user experience, the game time, the play time, the way people are consuming ads, the ARPU, and maybe if then you do have an interesting CTR, you know that people are clicking on it, they are attracted to the video that you are showing. We are going with the prototype, and that was something new. It's at least for us, it was something new as well.
Super interesting. And then, just as an aside from that, would there have ever been a case where a game perhaps wouldn't have performed when testing on Android, but perhaps would have done so on iOS?
For sure, definitely. And it was already on this second phase of ATT, when you start going back to iOS, or you start putting iOS back in your mind as important as Android, right? And we do have several cases that we launched the game on GP. There was nice IPM, so we could have some scale. The game was okay. It was generating, of course, money, but just okay, decent amount of money. And then you do launch iOS, and you see how, especially in that beginning, and I think that's where Boombit was really took a lot of the market, and it was kind of a bit ahead, is that we were, since day one, running iOS 14 campaigns on Facebook, on Snap, on TikTok, on all networks. We're always trying to get those users, even though you had almost no data. But once again, when you look at the money spent, money generated, these users were generating a lot of money. Why? Because people were, let's assume that maybe 60% of the industry was afraid of going to iOS without data, and you had this almost free users. Like the users were there, they were updating their phones to iOS 14, they wanted to play games, and not a lot of people were advertising on them because they were afraid of this, of not having the data to then analyze them. And that's when we started noticing that there is still, I think there's still not as much competition as there should be on iOS. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this because it means that tomorrow CPIs can go even go higher. But yeah, so that was interesting. iOS is definitely worth still investing a lot of your money. Yeah.
With the limited kind of data that Apple is obviously sharing with the networks and with the by rights then the advertisers and the MMPs, we're naturally starting to look higher up the funnel towards kind of other data points which perhaps would be an indicator of success. In terms from a hyper casual perspective, that you look no further than creatives as a kind of a precursor to performance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you changed the way that you approach creatives? Have you changed the way that you approach iterating on creatives, for example? Are you utilizing any third parties or external partners that are helping with that?
Mm-hmm. For now, no. I think everything stayed pretty much the same. I think once again the users are the same. What changed was the way they are attributed, right? So like for a normal person, we are a normal person, but for someone that is not aware of iOS 14 or ATT, etc., and they are watching a video, they'll react exactly the same, right? Because it is nothing that is impacting user behavior. So then I think in terms of creative production, still exactly the same as before. Once again, what changed was more maybe how we look at performance, creative performance, maybe trying to look for all the metrics that we can and try to get some type of success metrics out of those instead of just going for the classic IPM and CPI that are still very important. There's no doubt of that. We always try to optimize towards those. But yeah, I think in terms of creative production, still pretty much the same.
In terms of the industry, we're started to see a week doesn't go by without some form of a major announcement around a merger and acquisition. Mm-hmm. Looking at the way that incumbent hyper casual studios now are starting to diversify their gaming portfolios to bring in the likes of idle and merge type titles, including casual as well. And Boombit's no different. Would you be able to talk a little bit about perhaps your diversification of your portfolio and kind of what that looks like and what you've seen so far to date?
Definitely, and it's I think it's a pretty nice success story, and I'm very happy to I've been here already for a long time to see it grow. And I think so mainly hyper casual focus, right? But then even inside that, we started different branches that have been showing an immense success. So of course, Boombit start going towards publishing, right? So instead of just building your own internal production team, start going towards external publishing. It's been a major win. Boombit's been releasing lots of games every month, and our team has been growing like crazy for the past couple of years. Okay, for the past year mainly, of course, but then also I think Midcore and Idle has been a really nice investment from our side. One of our best games, and it's Ant Royale that actually it even has a really nice story. That it was more like an internal project that the team was really passionate about, and they really decided to go forward without having any wild thoughts or wild dreams in mind. It was really just an internal project that we believed in it and we trusted. And nowadays it's by far one of our best games, and it allowed us to now enter this mid-core universe that is it's very, very interesting, and definitely it's a totally different type of user as well, which means that it's definitely a good approach from our side to start diversifying and not going away from hyper casual, but adding on hyper casual.
And I guess also, just without a segue into kind of hyper social from Snap, the opportunity to start kind of integrating SnapKit, which is obviously Bitmoji Kit and the like, but also then gaming on Snap, looking at HTML5 gaming as well.
For sure. So it's going to be pretty interesting to go also into the HTML world. So right now, yeah, we do have one game ready to be released, I hope, with Snap and on Snap Games, and it's definitely a platform that we are very interested in right now. We see that it was a really nice answer to the ATT world. It is, in terms of production, much more simpler than what we were imagining. So in terms of actually like turning a game into HTML, it's been super quick, super bug-free, and we are very interested in seeing the potential of this platform, and maybe even just adding up to Android and iOS, just build a version of HTML and always be ready to go. It's very, very interested and excited for that as well.
I look forward to playing it. Yeah. We're kind of, as we start to draw to a conclusion, it's a couple more questions I wanted to throw your way.
For sure.
We've got a platform in our conversation today where there's going to be a number of perhaps indie studios or small developers who don't know quite how to publish their own games at this stage. What stands Boombit or then by the like Boomhits aside from the rest of the ecosystem? What's your USP if you were to kind of lean into this?
Yeah, I think I do have a couple of things. So for the fact that we are starting to diverse so much in terms, not even in game genres, but also inside of hyper casual, like the different types of gaming, that the games that we are launching is definitely a plus for us. I think that there's nothing right now, from idle to idle arcade to midcore to hyper casual to even racing games, right? The main games from that are built internally by Boombit. They are very like car focused, racing focused. They all have a big and a very, very distinctive users. But right now we are aware of this, and all of them we know how to start UA, how to push monetization, and you can see, like, you can go now to the Apple Store, to Google Play, download like 3 or 4 of our games that are totally random, and you see how different they can be. Because only by being within different game genres, give different types of games, even within hyper casual, I think it was very interesting to start learning that users are indeed different. Also, something that I'm very, very proud is from our Facebook team, so our Facebook user acquisition team, because we were able to be one of the very, very few hyper casual publishers that use and still invest a lot and take a lot out of Facebook, not only just for creative testing, but for actual UA, which is kind of a knowledge that we inherited already for a lot of years of user acquisition, and for a lot of years of different types of games, different types of users. And I think all this knowledge and all this user base is allowing us to be very dominating on Facebook within hyper casual, which is something that I think if there's a lot of hyper casual publishers here, they know how hard it is, and we are very, very strong there. So I think these two things can make Boombit definitely like a different type of hyper casual publisher.
Fantastic. And then just as a final wrap up before I throw it open to any questions for the remaining time, what are your future predictions? What do you see happening in 2022? Where do you see hyper casual going? See, we've got the impending changes from Google around the Pixel and the GAID, but just I'd be really interested to hear from you where you think hyper casual is going into 2022 and beyond.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of say the same thing that I said in 2020, because even before iOS 14 came out, a lot of people were very, very worried about hyper casual, about gaming. And once again, like, I think that users, they do not change, right? The users are still the same, the way they consume and the way they play games. And the good thing about the hyper casual industry is that it is kind of an ecosystem that is fed by other publishers and fed by other studios, because at the end of the day, 90% of advertising, it is from other mobile games, which means that the users are very, very comfortable and kind of safe within this industry, and so are the publishers and the developers. I do think, of course, there's more and more idle arcades coming out, even just basic idle games, they are also starting to be a bit more common to see on the top charts than before. But I still think that hyper casual, the pure hyper casual, it still has a lot of years, or at least a couple of years, to still be on the top charts. If you are a developer, if you are a studio, you are not losing. You are still on time to produce a lot of hyper casual prototypes, because that's it. The users are within this ecosystem of consuming, enjoying, and always being fed up with new games. Not fed up, but being fed with new games. And they are it's a really reliable ecosystem, I would say.
Fantastic. Gonçalo, thank you very much for your time. It's been
Thank you.